Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Rebecca Minkoff could write the rule book on being a fearless business leader. In fact, she just did. While leading her internationally recognized fashion brand through the throes of the pandemic, Rebecca also found the time to channel her experience and insights into her latest book, Fearless: The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. I'm thrilled to have the fashion design icon Rebecca join me on this episode of The Voice of Retail. We talk about persevering as a retailer in the pandemic, the Female Founder Collective, and of course, Rebecca's new book.
You know, these outposts become really important for discovery and emotion and connection. And I think that when we do come back, we'll be focusing heavily on, you know, maybe there'll be a metric for authentic connections made, you know, versus it's just about sales per square foot. Yeah. I think it's about digging deeper than that, because people right now, if they're wearing your logo, they're saying to everyone else, I'm part of this tribe, and there needs to be a much deeper understanding of what that tribe means.
Let's listen in now. Rebecca, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is such a treat to have you on the podcast. I've been really looking forward to this. Amongst all other things, another veteran podcaster. What, you've got 183 episodes under your belt. That's impressive for someone with a full-time job, right?
It is, but I learned that batching makes everything easy. So I can record a bunch at once and then have them for several weeks at a time, which is great.
You know, you don't really probably need much of an introduction to my audience, a fashion, a retail icon, but my learnings is often the case that many people might know the name or familiar with your product, but don't know the whole story. So tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and the business that we know as Rebecca Minkoff.
Yeah, so I've always had a love and a passion for design. I first started sewing at the age of 8 when I wanted this dress, and my mom was like, I won't buy you the dress, but I'll teach you how to sew. And I was really hooked, and it was a craft that I dove deeper into as the years went on, and eventually in high school had an opportunity to spend most of the day doing that, because it was a school that, instead of electives, had your chosen artistic path. And when it came time to decide on school or college or going right to work, I just was like, I need to get to work. I need to start. And so I moved to New York with an internship I secured, started working for a designer, and the rest is definitely not history, but that was my beginnings of what became then my company, which I launched with a couple of items in 2001, and then the bag really hit in 2005.
Yeah, that was a real icon in the fashion industry. Now, talk about the scope and scale of the business. Again, it would be a very familiar name to many, if not all. But what is your, where do you trade? Do you trade across the world? Just give us an update of the scope of the business.
Yeah, well, I can give you pre-pandemic scope. Pre-pandemic, we were in over 900 points of sale across the globe. Obviously, that number has shrunk. By how much? I still don't know. But we're an internationally recognized brand, have a very large presence in Asia, and the United States is kind of our stronghold.
Right on. Now, I was in your store in Soho, but I'm not sure that one is still there. Do you have your own store still in the, thanks to the COVID era or whatever strategies you pursue?
No, actually, they were I don't want to say, what's the word, victims of COVID. They were we actually had to close our stores due to COVID. We had a store that was really rocked hard during the riots in LA, and a lot of it destroyed. And then with the open, close, it was impossible to retain staff. And we just said, our lease is up. Let's not be a part of this roller coaster. And New York as well. We had an opportunity to get out. And so that was a financial choice we felt like we had to make with so much uncertainty. Yeah,
get out and revisit at a future time for sure.
Yeah.
If that's an option. All right. Well, listen, what brought us together is this book of yours. The book is Fearless: The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. So first of all, let's talk about the tradecraft of writing a book. And did you always want to write a book, and how did you approach it? Did you think that there was a gap on the shelves that needed to be filled? And just tell me about your journey about writing and publishing a book.
I had been approached to write books or write a book several times, but I never could figure out, well, what's the value in a book? And every time someone said, you should write a book, all I could think of was a coffee table book. And I was like, that is the last thing anyone needs. And so when a friend of mine sort of said, you have 20 years under your belt of being in this business, that's pretty valuable. And I was like, oh, that's something I could definitely share. And so, I signed the book deal pre-COVID, and, had a lot of the book outlined and ready to sort of begin filling in. And then March hit and the publisher said, hey, are you still cool to make the October turn-in date? And I said, you know what? Yes. And I'm going to take all these rules that sort of got me to where I am and wear test them now when we're facing a loss of over 70% of our business, only having our website, and see if this actually works again. And so for me, as I was writing the book, to be living through basically saving, me and the team saving the company, bringing it back to life, ensuring we didn't go out of business during COVID, to me was a great way to wear test these rules and say, you know what, it worked in the beginning, it worked again, and hopefully they're rules that can help out anyone.
Well, as you say, the book is as much a personal journey as it is a rule book of guide and the lessons you learned in life and particularly as a brand and retailer kind of inform the philosophies I find. Talk about your starting the company and the lessons you learned, like these things that you pressure tested for the COVID era. What sticks out in your mind as the kind of one or two things that just got you through it as both a business person and just overall philosophically in your life?
I think the ability to persist, right? There are so many times where it would have been so much easier to throw in the towel and say, this is too hard. This is taking every fiber of not only my being, but our lean and mean staff and team. And yet each time we were confronted with an obstacle, it was, okay, how do we overcome it? And, sometimes I say success is just being able to get back up again and put one foot in front of the other. So I would say that, but also the idea of, early on, and I know this sounds trite, when I had a couple of items in consignment boutiques in New York City, I knew the only way to sell those items was to promote. And I would stand in Union Square with a handful of postcards being like, there's a new designer, go check her out. And obviously times have changed and you're not going to do that now. You'll send an email. But to me, I put a big graph on my wall and I was like, how many postcards equals how many items sold? And when I found that golden ratio, then it wasn't about, oh, no one likes my stuff, or maybe it's raining today and no one came by. It was like, no, there's a ratio. And at a certain point, I know how many postcards does it take to sell a top, or how many emails to editors does it take to get one to reply? And so, to reapply that again and say, okay, all of our outlets for reaching our customer are down except for our site. What is the ratio of how many emails, text messages, cross promotions, giveaways? What is that nexus of all of hitting her so many ways that make sales? And then I felt, and the team felt in control of that experience, and in control versus at the whims of,
right,
does she need a bag? It's COVID. Where is she going? Maybe that's why she didn't buy today. But so we just kept looking at those numbers and optimizing for that ratio.
So interesting. You just let the math point you in the right direction, just like, as you said, handing out postcards. Now, let's talk about fear. It's something that pops up in your book, and certainly we've had no shortage of it over the past 18 months. But you see it both as a motivator and an inhibitor. What's your advice for managing through that balancing act? I mean, basically, you've just been doing it. You just told me the advice is just kind of focus on what you can control. But is there more to it than that?
I think leaning and leveraging on relationships. I think, networking can sometimes have a bad vibe, if you will, or people go, ooh, it's cringy. And I'm only here because I have networked, I have maintained those relationships, so when I'm calling everyone I know to say, hey, could you promote this or do this, or do you want to partner on something? It's not as if it's the first time, and it's not random and a stranger. And I think, I think it can't be overstated that if you have your tribe and everyone can pull together to support each other, that can be very valuable, especially in times like this. Like to me, competition went out the window. It was, how can we all help each other?
Let's talk about the Female Founder Collective. It's not for profit. Talk about the objectives behind that and the origin story and what you do there.
So I really launched the collective out of a personal desire to connect with more founders, feeling like there wasn't a community of women who were openly sharing their struggles, their tips, their tricks, their resources. And I felt like, again, networking has always been a powerful source of success. But I also felt like the consumer needs an easy, like no-brainer way to think about stuff and purchase and support. And you can't make it too hard. And so could there be a symbol that really said to any person, man or woman, oh, this is woman owned, I can support her. And so that was the humble beginnings of it. And then you could just see from how she responded that there was a huge desire. And so we went from, 0 to over 12,000 members in a matter of years. And we've had, the increase of these women actually need education, after looking at it. And how do we bridge that gap? And how do we provide them with the best of the best in terms of education and programming to sort of say, okay, you don't know how to do this. You launched your company with a passion. Here's what you don't know. And here's where we're going to fill in the holes.
And that's what it is to be as you called them, a member, right? They get that networking power, and they also get that thought leadership and practical advice from people who've done what they aspire or are doing. Is that a fair description?
Correct. These women have done things and or are the best in their chosen field, and they're giving their hard-won knowledge to others.
Well, and beyond that, you've got a podcast, as I mentioned off the top, over 180 episodes, Superwoman. So tell us about that. And I guess you can find that on all the major platforms. But tell us about what you do. What's your, when you approach an interview, how do you approach it? Is it similar to the collective? You're looking for advice and practical advice, and talk about your vision when you get on the mic.
So for me, the podcast is really about showing other women that the people that they admire, think are perfect, have their shit together, actually, have gone through hard times, and this is how they've overcome it. I try and get the women to be as vulnerable, some less than others, as possible, just to really showcase that, like, this is hard. And for me, at least, I know when I know someone else is having a hard time, I'm like, oh, this is normal. We keep having these illusions that this is all easy and perfect and there's never any holes in the boat, but this is normal. And so I love shining those stories on women. And so I try and make my interviews as personal as possible. And the ones that I think are the best performing episodes are the one where the women actually let down their guard and really talk about what it is that they've had to do to get to where they are.
Right. The authentic stories really resonate, I'm sure, with your audience. Yeah. Yeah,
for sure.
So, fun factoid, you and I have actually met. We met each other in your store in Soho. I was, and used to do, maybe will in the future, used to do retail tours for Canadian retailers in New York during January, the big show. And in the pre-tour, I wandered into your store. I met your brother, Uri, and was looking at their tech, and then came back later that night, and you were having I think it was a launch party, and we kind of said hi to each other, kind of thing. So let's talk about retail. So what role at that particular store, but broadening the lens, what role is there for technology and retail in your mind? Is it taking the place of something more important, or is it an accelerator, so to speak, to how you move your brand forward?
I think for us, we're looking at retail. And again, we don't have current stores to do this with today. But, when we do, I think it's an added experiential touch point for the brand. It is a place for community. It's a place for people to touch and feel the real thing. And I think if we went back into retail, or when we go back in, it's not just about, the usual metrics. It is all the other sort of unseen ways that you affect a customer. And I think that as the acceleration of online has only increased, these outposts become really important for discovery and emotion and connection. And I think that when we do come back, we'll be focusing heavily on, maybe there'll be a metric for authentic connections made, versus it's just about sales per square foot. Yeah. I think it's about digging deeper than that, because people right now, if they're wearing your logo, they're saying to everyone else, I'm part of this tribe, and there needs to be a much deeper understanding of what that tribe means.
Do you think that's part of a search for meaning coming out of the COVID era? So what is it all about, kind of thing? And because there's always a debate around how strong and important a brand is. You've described it as your tribe. Is that, you think that's been eroded, or you think that's been amplified with what we've been through?
I think it's been amplified because people didn't need to purchase things. They weren't going anywhere. And so when they did, I think it became much more meaningful. It wasn't about, let me just pop out to H&M and get a white t-shirt. It was, I think you probably had time to stare at your closet and consider, what do I actually need right now? Or if I am bored out of my mind and I'm shopping just because I have nothing else to do and I can't leave the house, I'm going to be much more considerate about what I'm spending my money on.
And back to retail tech a little bit. I mean, you may not right now have physical stores, but you're in a lot of stores. You would see a lot of tech around stores. Is there anything that impresses you? I mean, interactive kiosks, mirrors, anything that jumps out at you and says, this is nice, this is new, this actually enhances the customer experience with my product, another product, or are you still left a bit wanting from what you're seeing out in the retail marketplace?
That's a great question. I think I'm still lacking. I mean, I think the conversation we had started, which companies and brands that we toured through have done an incredible job of making bigger and better. I still think that sometimes people go too tech forward for tech's sake, just to be flashy and cool. And they forget, the customer just wants to go in, find what she wants, and leave as seamlessly as possible. And what are all those friction points? And how do you take a lot of those friction points away versus the flashy screen, the shoes on a belt? I just think sometimes people can get, and if you have the money to throw at that, that's awesome. But I think at the end of the day, the answer is simple. I want to walk into a store. I personally don't want anyone to talk to me. I want to easily grab my item. I want a free dressing room without a line. So how could that be adapted? And then I want to pay easily and walk out, or just walk out and have it charge my card. So I think that there's much more simple solutions out there that are still not totally in real life yet.
You mentioned friction. I had the opportunity last week to interview MIT professor Renee Richardson Goslin, and definitely someone you should check out as an interview. And she focuses on this integration of technology and marketing and people. And she actually said she thinks there should be more friction at certain points in the shopping experience. And so what her work focuses on is, with too much technology, too much AI, everything happens so fast, and it can happen fast in the right direction, or can happen equally fast in the wrong direction. And I thought it was such an interesting perspective, because we as retailers, we often talk about eliminating friction. She calls it frictionless fever. But sometimes I do think that there's that experiential component of retail. And what we're really talking about is this chasm between efficiency and experience. And when you shop, when you personally go out and shop, I'm sure you're a shopper. What do you think about that thinking that there is room for slowing down a bit and being, more experiential in your shopping? Or are you just an efficiency shopper? I just want to get it done. How would you like to see your wholesale partners, merchandise your product?
I think what I want personally is, and each person has such different preferences. So for me, I can only say what I want. What I want to give to my customer is a lot of different options. It's why we had the menu of drinks, or the menu of start building my room. You could tell by how they're selecting things, how they want to be treated. They want to be anonymous. Do they want to be waited on hand and foot? Because you never know. Me personally, don't talk to me. Don't ask me how my day is. Don't ask if you can do anything for me. Just get me my sizes so I can try it on. And then I want to leave, I think that the experience that I talk about is choose your own adventure. And then I think that there's a level of depth, and it's something we did often pre-COVID was the events that we would have, whether it was partnering with charities to have shopping events, or it was me doing a live podcast and having other women in. There was no agenda. There was no, please leave here with something. It was, when you come to Rebecca Minkoff, it's known for this. And so if stores operated that way, they said, what does she come to us for? What can we give her? I think that those experiences just tighten the connection between the customer and the store.
It's funny because it makes me think of signaling mechanisms, as an associate trying to figure out which camp you're in. And there's a great cannabis retailer actually in Canada called Superette. And when you walk in the door, they have red and green shopping baskets. Red being, don't talk to me, I just want to shop. And green being, come talk to me, I'd like to explore. So, I think about these kind of signaling mechanisms to help retailers figure out if you're Rebecca or if you're someone else just wants to.
Oh, it's brilliant. See, it's simple. You don't need like a flashy screen. It's just red or green. Come talk to me or leave me alone. Yeah.
I'm looking for insight. I'm looking for, inspiration, or I'm looking for this product. I'm here to get it now. Get out of my way and let me shop for it.
Exactly.
Last couple of questions about the COVID era. We've already talked about its impact. I'm curious as you reflect on structural changes to the business versus, changes that were an adaptation to an unusual period. In your mind, as we all think about the last 18 months, what do you think has changed or could be different moving forward about retail that might not have happened without the COVID era? E-commerce was already happening. It got accelerated. Now it's going to normalize. So, we take that one out because that was already happening. But is there anything structural in your mind that you're thinking about, whether it's your relationship with your wholesale partners or whether it's as you think about stores? How do you view that?
I think the opportunity for personalization and almost, some stores have done this well, where each salesperson can be more incentivized to almost become an influencer and making extra commissions by just not only selling to their book, but who are you hiring and what is their ability to influence and inspire, whether it's how they style the collection or put it together, how socially savvy are they? I know that there's a couple of associates I met at department stores that had their own Instagram, and just by posting stuff, the inbound of the people that followed them would say, I want that. So how do you sort of take sales associates and have them become nano micro influencers? And then I think the personalization, I got an email from a company and they didn't get it right, but I appreciated that they were like, we've selected this for you based on what you bought from us before. Yeah. But if you could take that in, that's not new by any means, but if you could take that into a store, if there was a way to connect, in our initial wish for our store, we did have an app, which we realized was not a great idea, but there was going to be a connection. So an associate can immediately see what you've ordered when you walk into the store and you sign into the app and build you a fitting room based on actual things you might like. And so I thought, is there another way without having to download an app that you could know who's walking into a store and actually personalize and customize to them in a way that they're like, yes, she sees me. She's not just this random person that was just hired that has no idea about my style. She's really studied me and she's giving me what I want.
Right. Anything on the design, or I guess from your perspective, just picking up on the whole, the individual associate is now the micro influencer. Is that a different approach for you and your team as you think about marketing and launching product and product drops? And is that reorient how you think and about you market the product?
Yes and no. It doesn't matter who we hire, and I'm not saying this from a point of ego. She prefers it on me. And I think, nano and micro influencers have their value, especially if we want to acquire new audiences. But I think, I'm very much interested in our future is there a modern Mary Kay-like structure where you're not necessarily picking the nano and micro influencers from the list that your PR agency provides. There are women out there who are damn good at selling Tupperware. Who are those for Rebecca Minkoff, and how do we activate them and begin to start selling it in a way that those women have ancillary income, they're excited about the brand, and they're selling in pockets and places that you might never reach.
Interesting. It's almost back to the future a little bit, right? That multi-level marketing, but powered,
but not criminal style.
but not criminal style. So we'll put that one aside. All right. Well, listen. What's next for you and the business? I mean, it's been a ride for sure. How are you thinking about the future? Have you got some new exciting product lines you want to talk about, and where can people learn more about all that, the future, and all that great stuff?
Yeah, so coming up, we just launched a collaboration I did with Sperry for shoes, which is so good. Our second fragrance comes out as soon as they are allowed to unload the shipping container that is at sea. So that'll happen in the next few weeks. And then we have another fun collaboration with Emu for some inside slippers. And then January 1, we launch Home, which will be top of mattress, which I'm excited about.
Oh, that's exciting. That's new for you, right?
That is new for us, yes.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, listen, Rebecca, thanks for spending time with me here in The Voice of Retail. It's been great to get your insights. Once again, the book is Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. I'll put a link in the show notes to where everyone can get it. I wish you continued success. And once again, thanks for taking time to chat with me this morning.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of LeBlanc Company Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at leblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.